Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new EthStaker community call. Today, we're going to talk about the Ephemery testnet. But first, let me introduce everyone around here who joined the call and who's going to be asking question alongside. First, I'd like to introduce the EthStakers member. Hello, Nixo. Hello, Buddha. Hello, Sam. Hello, Hani. Um, we also have a bunch of broader HeStaker community members joining us today. Jonathan, Superfizz, Ladislaus are all people that you've seen around or heard about that are very involved into the staking community. But our main guests today are going to be Mayor Evel from Ephemery, but also from the protocol support at the EF. And we're also glad to welcome PK910 from Ephemery, but also from the Eve Panda Ops team at the EF. So welcome everyone. I'm glad you guys are here. Before I get into the meat of things, I'd just like to um, remind people that we've been having a bunch of these community calls recently. If you have any different topics you'd like us to cover, make sure to join the EthStaker Discord and ask us if we can do a community call with them. We're very much open to doing a bunch of these. Right now, I don't believe we have anything left in the pipeline, but we're happy to add more of these calls and even like have a bunch of people hosting them as well. All right, enough of these introductions, and let's get into the main thing, which is going to be Ephemery. I'm sure we have plenty of people who are viewing this and are not sure exactly what Ephemery is or what's the history behind it. So let me first ask Mario about this. Mario, can you just do a quick summary of what Ephemery, what's the history behind it?
Yeah, thank you so much, Remy. Thanks for having us. Yeah, so Ephemery is a project idea that was somewhat conceived around 2 years ago. Yeah, I think it was exactly at this time, at mid-October at DEF CON in Bogota. We talked with a bunch of people. I remember Danny Ryan, I remember Chris and Lumir working on some hackathon testnet projects. And around the time, it was the peak of the testnet crisis, right? We had Gerli winding down and not having enough testnet ETH. Holoshki still didn't exist at the time. So out of this testnet crisis, the Ephemery was born with the idea that we have these long-term running testnets, which are not really sustainable, also need to be ephemeral, also need to be killed in a couple of years because we run out of the ETH, they get bloated and so on. So what if we do it the other way around? What if we, instead of running them for a couple of years, we actually have some predictable ephemeral automatically reset scope? And it's been shaping as this cute little community project since then. The network was started in December 2022, so almost 2 years now. The ephemery has been resetting every period, which was like a few days, then it was 1 week, and right now it's 1 month or 28 days. So what is ephemery? It's a testnet which comes back to Genesis every 28 days, and this allows for tiny state, which can be synced on any machine. It can give you as much ETH as you want from the faucets because it will get it back in a couple of weeks. So a bunch of these limitations of the traditional test nets are lifted, and it provides other kind of testing environment for people who maybe have some like hardware restrictions or want to just test out staking easily. Or also app developers, because the problem with Ephemery, of course, is that you lose a bunch of contracts every reset, but we deploy some base set of contracts, I don't know, Safe, Uniswap, and so on, after each reset. So there is some base set of contracts, but I believe what is it most useful for is developers who are just learning, trying stuff out, right? Like how many hello worlds there is on Gerli, Sepolia, Holoshki, right? We don't need that. We can just reset it. So it's this sustainable and cute little testnet ephemery. Yeah, and the mechanism behind it is defined in EIP 6119. So it's actually like broader idea, which Ephemery is implementation of. Just to be clear about that. Yeah, yeah. I think that's it.
Great. I believe there's a lot of people that are working behind the scene on Ephemery, and I forgot to mention I'm also one of them. I'm involved in the Ephemery organization, but maybe Mario, you could tell us a little more about like who's working behind this in terms of like the team or like the people, and maybe just give us a quick intro into what they're doing exactly.
Yeah, so Ephemery has been kind of a side project to multiple people, slowly growing through the years. And uh, so PK910 here was probably the biggest contributor. Thanks to him, we were managed to start a network 2 years ago, and he's been very, very active in maintaining a bunch of stuff since then. It was way before PK joined Panda Ops, so I believe that if Ephemery helped him to get there eventually as well. Like it was, I believe it was a nice experience. There was me and PK910 in the beginning, but there was also you, Remy. You've been also contributing, helping with running validators. Ladislaus right here is also a community member, contributor. There is Libe who's not on this call. And then there are people who've been working on implementations in clients. Where as well here it was Terry, Holy, and Glory. Um, and also we get some specs help from Adedamala. So there was multiple contributors throughout the time who like come and go, but those who stay and keep actively working on this, that's me and PK910 and also Libel Ladislaus here. Yeah, yeah, but it's the idea of Ephemery is as well that like with the whole infrastructure being open with all these scripts, like anybody can come and contribute. So what we see is like some small first time contributors learning about Ephemery, coming in and just doing their little issue and then disappearing, I guess. So yeah.
You said like people were working on client implementation. So like why do we need people working on client implementation? Is this not just like adding a few settings and like similar to all of these other tests that just having the base network setting in the client to make this work?
Yeah, that's a great question because, as you may know, every other testnet, Holeshki, Sepolia right now are just hard-coded in clients. There is Genesis, which is hard-coded in every client, or I mean, in case of Holeshki, it's actually not because the Genesis is too big with so many validators, so the CL clients download them. But so there is some preset in every client, and with Emery, we come to this problem that well, it resets. The reset mechanism works in a way that we actually generate a new Genesis, which is somewhat same as the previous one. It just iterates, increments some values. For example, what we need to change is the chain ID, which breaks forks from the previous network, which completely breaks the chain and doesn't allow for a replay attack. Importantly, and when you change a chain ID, when you change some fundamental things, even it's a small change, right? But if you change something in Genesis, the network um, uh, uh, needs to be updated to the latest version of the Genesis. And because the Genesis is deterministic, we know what is it right now based on the previous values, but we need to get there somehow. So we cannot just simply hard code some Genesis in Ephemery in a client implementation because it always needs the current one. So compared to a regular network, the regular network just pulls the current values, but in a Ephemery network, the client needs to look at the previous values or some base values and calculate the current one. So this calculation, this extra step, needs to be added to clients. And it's not really complicated per se. It depends on the client architecture, but it's something that, again, is sort of a good first issue or some relatively small project that people can work on and learn about it. So we had people from the fellowship. So I run Ethereum Protocol Fellowship, which is a program for people to learn about core development, to come in and start working on some projects. And we had 3 or 4 people from the fellowship to implement Ephemery. Currently, the active release, like you can actually do it like dash dash ephemery or dash dash network equals ephemery or something. It's currently active in Teku, Besu, and Lodestar. In any other clients, you need to import it manually, which means you need to do like get init and point it to the Genesis JSON. You can download the Genesis from Ephemery repo and run it with your client, but you need to have a flag which points client to this network setup, to this network configuration, which is like an extra step. I think like people can learn about a client and using this, and it's not bad to have it per se, but it's still something extra that many people who are just like learning to stake, for example, are facing. Or throughout the time, we encourage people uh, to implement it in clients and just make it easier for people to run it. Yeah,
PK910, you've
yeah.
been quite involved in the whole testing infrastructure, also at the Ethereum Foundation, but also as part of Ephemery. Can you elaborate on like what was wrong with the existing testnet, or the tooling related to testing, and how is Ephemery helping with all of this?
Yep, can do. Thanks for the question. I think Mario already touched both of the main benefits we have from Ephemery. So the first one is obviously the relaxed funding situation. Long-running test nets like Sepolia or formerly Gurley always have the problem of fund distribution. The amount of available funds is basically capped by the genesis state and usually doesn't grow much during the lifetime of the network. So it needs to be ensured that funds are available to everyone, but at the same time, the network doesn't run out of funds during the lifetime, which is basically what we've seen with Gurley. And this big problem we basically don't have with Ephemery because it resets every month or so, and all the funds are going back to the Genesis wallets. So we can be much more relaxed in handing them out to users who need them. And yeah, it's actually quite easy to get like a few hundreds of ETH in minutes without spending weeks on mining or even buying testnets funds for real money, which is really not what testnets are intended for. So yeah, funding situation is basically on the family just like how a public testnet should be. It's easy for everyone to get some, and yeah. The second big advantage is, as Marius also mentioned, is the reduced state size. Long-running testnets have a quite big state. For example, running a Sepolia node currently takes about 500 gigabytes of storage, and it will only get bigger the longer the network runs. So syncing such a node from scratch can take hours, and you usually don't want to have a 500 gigabyte testnet node on your local SSD for testing, because for most users, it's just a waste of storage that. And yeah, with Ephemery, we have a much smaller state. Right now, we are midway through the iteration. My testnet, most of my nodes take about 5 to 6 gigabytes of storage. So I assume at the end of the iteration, it will take about 10 gigabytes max, which is way lower than a usual big testnet node. And yeah, such a tiny state basically makes the network much more flexible. You can sync it in minutes and can test it even for full in-memory nodes or something like this. And yeah, I think these are the main two benefits that we have from Ephemery.
I believe
Yeah,
you've
I
been
have a
quite go ahead, Nixo.
I have a context question for you. So do ephemeral testnets um, provide like a new paradigm? Does it replace persistent testnets? Is there a future eventually where we stop seeing persistent testnets and where we only see ephemeral testnets?
I think both long-running testnets and short-running testnets have its use case. The short-running testnets, as Mario also mentioned, is more for the hello world things and testing something that doesn't need to be on-chain forever. The long-running testnets are then more for longer-running tests and making it available for a broader community to test, which is actually not really needed on the first iterations of implementing something. So yeah, I think both testnets have their use case.
Just add, I would say that every testnet is ephemeral. When we look at the current state of things, like Ephemery, when we were starting Holashkir before, like it was given clear, okay, this will be supported for 4 or 5 years. I don't remember right now, but that's the problem, right? Like every testnet is somewhat ephemeral, and Ephemery actually, or what PK said, like it makes it easier for these long running testnet when bunch of this stuff that you don't need to have on the big node, on the big testnet, hello worlds, whatnot. You can do it on the ephemeral one, and the big testnets will be growing slower, so they can be supported longer or easier to use longer. You don't need to waste their resources. Yeah. So I would say that it's symbiosis, that like both of the kind of testnets work together. Yeah.
When
Can I say,
go ahead.
sorry. I just want to say I'm so excited about this because I remember like the Madasha testnet way back in, it was the first formal beacon chain testnet, and it was so much fun it was fun to try to break. And now with, the modern testnets, there's not a real opportunity for home users to attempt to break the network. But with something like Ephemery, with its open access and I sincerely believe the network is hardened to a point where it would be very difficult to break, but giving this opportunity to play makes it a really exciting toy for home users, for researchers to really just throw anything they can at it and know that there's no harm, no foul. It's just a fun thing. And even people who are interested in staking now, instead of having to spend hours syncing a chain, they can hop on in one afternoon. I've been so excited about Ephemery for like 2 years now, and I can't wait to just play. Like I think of it as a playground. I don't know if you all think of it that way.
That explains
Yeah.
it best, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Very well said. Yeah. Please come and break it. It's awesome. Like it's definitely one of the use cases. Also, one of the things we didn't mention is that we try to break it. I mean, we try to run forks as soon as possible. So you have these EF blog posts coming out like, oh, Gerli Holashki activating the Spectra hard fork on this date and so on. But Ephemery is there even sooner. We always activate as soon as possible because we have we don't lose anything, and it's easy for us to coordinate and just see how the things go. So that's also one of the use cases for sure. Yeah. Come and break things.
There are the mechanics around slashing that we haven't really had an opportunity to dig into deeply in the real world. And slashing is so rare on mainnet, and it's rare on testnets. But on Ephemery, we can really set up slashable conditions just for fun. And I like to believe that that's going to support us all in the long run when we discover things that, or maybe even when we just proliferate knowledge about slashing that we didn't really have before.
Slashing is definitely an interesting thing to test because it happened to me. I got slashed on Ephemery just because I was like moving the validators around, right? I have node 1 and node 2. At one point, I forgot which one is which, and when I was loading the validators, I loaded both of them. So yeah, slashing. That's you have a ton of ETH to burn there and try it out. Yeah.
But that's actually also a good point because you've managed to slash your validators. The same happened on Huleshki, where I think Grandine slashed a huge range of their validators. And we don't have a problem with that because our network resets after a month and we can just restart the validators without problems. With Huleshki, we will have that problems over the next years till the network finishes. So yeah.
That's a good point. I believe like one of the shortcoming of the big testnet that were created initially, when I think about Girly or even Holsky, was that the distribution of the testnet currencies was an afterthought. So people just assumed that, oh, we could just give a bunch of these testnet currencies to Whale and they will find a way to distribute it around. But that's not what happened, and I believe the distribution of testnet currency on some of these longer lasting testnet was actually a challenge. Maybe PK910, you could tell us exactly what kind of challenge there, because I know you've been running a few faucets.
Well, Well, yeah, I'm running the POV, the proof of work for that, and it's basically a fight against farmers all the way. So right now, even we see about, let me check the right number. Yeah, we actually have 1,600 miners on the Sefolia for that. So yeah, it's basically a challenge to get the best for everyone and yeah,
And if
try to
I'm
get
Well,
rid of farmers.
and like there's an arm race between like people who are trying to give testnet currencies to whoever should be using them, and potential farmers or people who want to kind of abuse network or just pile on these testnet currencies, right?
I love this for kids or other people who just aren't privileged actors in the system. Like they, a 10-year-old now has the opportunity to be a real participant in the network. There aren't these who boundaries or the how do you get in, or do you even have a CPU that's powerful enough to mine at a faucet? Like this just lowers that boundary, and the gamification brings it to everyone. University classes, yeah, Nix. I love the way that this is going to really democratize the chain and give so many more people access to play.
Absolutely, that's a good point. Let me segue into the kind of work that was needed to get the network up and running, and maybe this one's going to be for Mario. Can you give us like a good overview of like what was needed to get this testnet ephemery up and running, and like what's left to do in terms of like having this be very useful and very easy for everyone to use?
Right, thanks for me. It's also a good question on PK because I did a bunch of work initially about this, and so now I'm trying to think 2 years ago what we've been doing at a time. Because first it was an idea, and we created some group on Discord or somewhere we discussed it, and PK was there, and I remember. So the idea was that we'll create a script basically like so we don't have this ephemery calculation feature at the time. It wasn't even defined, but we didn't have any tooling within the clients to do this sort of reset, and it felt like a lot to come to a client team and make them work on implementing some new kind of testnet. So we just did it ourselves in script in DevOps tooling, which handles the clients, right? So it's basically external implementation. But following the same rules, it can be compatible with anything implemented within the client. At the time, it was like I did like just a mock bash script, like a simple bash script showing, okay, so follow the beacon height, and at some point reset delete the directories, like a simple reset script. And PK saw that, and based on that, he wrote the whole thing. He wrote actually properly usable script which handles a bunch of cases, and that was the first thing, I guess, that really set us off, because now we had some implementation, some systematic way of resetting the client, of loading the Genesis, and iterating on the Genesis values. Then it get more with the EIP that we wrote. I said a wrong number before. It was 19. Yeah. Oh, damn. Anyway, the EIP was the actual stepping stone there, because that we took some time to properly discuss all the parameters, properly discuss how it's supposed to behave, whether it's implemented externally or internally within the client. So based on this, we finally got some client implementation. And again, with our initial idea was that the same network that's running right now can be used either way, either manually loading it in this DevOps setup using a script, or directly implemented in the client. So all of this is compatible, and the network has been iterating ever since the December 2022. And there was always like more and more stuff needed as we go. We realized, okay, we have some bash script, but we need some Docker deployment. There was the cloud deployment from PK as well, I think, and all depth node support and all kinds of tooling, which then turned out that we need. So we also opened it more to the community. We have the Matrix channel where we invite people to discuss what they need with us, and so on. That's how we were getting the community traction basically. I'm not sure if I forgot anything from like 2 years ago. I mentioned it just quickly, but Philip, PK, if you have anything to add about what it was like when we were starting.
I think you summarized it pretty much. The bigger part that was missing was probably Explorer work, because we had some Explorers that didn't work properly, and we spent a huge amount of time on getting Explorers up and running. So yeah.
Mario authors so many EIPs apparently that he can't remember the number of his EIPs because he's still wrong. It's 6916.
Yeah, I literally have it on a sticker here. I have, oh, I cannot see it because of the background, but I have, yeah, you can see it. I have it on the sticker
Nice.
right here, and I just couldn't read it, right? I'm sorry, guys.
Running a testnet like
Okay, now I need
Ephemery.
the sticker. That's a perfect Back to the Future sticker. I'm sorry, Remy,
Yeah,
but
go ahead.
I need that now.
we'll make sure to get you one. But you won't be at DEF CON, so it's gonna be hard for us to give you one. But maybe we could mail it eventually.
ETH Denver every year. That's my commitment.
Awesome. But like people think that running these kinds of testnets is easy, but there's a lot of tooling and behind it. Like PK was mentioning, you need an explorer, you need like a launchpad if you want people to be able to perform their validator deposit, which is something we've not been talking a lot about, but Ephemery is also a good testnet for that. Just testing your staking setup, because it's very fast. It's very easy to get currency. You can perform your validator deposit there and just try staking. And like you need toolings for that as well. You need a deposit tool to create your deposit files and key store, and like you need a bunch of these kinds of tools as well. But PK910 was quite involved into making the explorers available for everyone. I also believe you were involved in helping fix bugs with the beacon chain project, or like making sure it can be run on Ephemery. So this has impacts on like the overall testing tooling and infrastructure as well. I'm not sure we talked about the recent development about like what happened recently with Ephemery. So maybe Mario, you could tell us like what are the big recent developments there.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and thanks by the way, Remy, for recapping. Like, I totally forgot about it right now, but 2 years ago, the initial idea, it's a stakers testnet. The original name wasn't even Ephemery, but the idea was to make it specifically for stakers. And then we realized that it's much more than that, or it could be much more than that. The initial idea was because there is just not enough ETH to stake on Curly and so on. Yeah. Now, so after 2 years, in the last couple of months, we've been doing some updates. We've been doing some improvements. Generally, strengthening the infrastructure, so we have more Genesis validators. We have more people running them. We have people participating in the Genesis validation, which means that even if nobody deposits and so on, the network is running smoothly since Genesis with like multiple entities, multiple people running it. So even if like one of us is down, the network still finalizes, which is pretty great. We changed the period. I mentioned it's 28 days. It used to be a week. So it's been just a couple of months. Like earlier this year, it still was only 1 week, which was too short. But we wanted to couple it with some more updates to with more Genesis validators and so on to make it into the 28 days that it is now. And and the most exciting part is the client implementations, because we got a Teku and Besu implementation in the last few weeks. In like literally like I think last week, Teku had a release which actually includes the flag. So Glory from the EPF has been working on that, and there's been a great update. She's been a great help with all of these. She managed to do the Genesis generation, which means that you can just run the client with the flag. But she also implemented the reset function in the Teku, if I'm correct. which means not just run the client and connect to the current network, but it maintains the connection even when the network resets. So it's without any external tooling, Tech will be able to run it completely independently, which is the most advanced implementation we got so far, and it's literally happening right now, like last week or so. So that's the I guess that's the latest updates. Yeah.
Can I just ask a question about this, like the way it's functioning? As like a staker, one of the ways I like to use testnets is like as like a fail-safe for myself. Like, oh, I'm going to do something new and try it. And so I always want to have like a testnet situation running. So like, I'm just really curious to try it. I've not used this yet before, and I'm curious to see like what happens as an actual staker if you get to day 28 and things turn over. Like, can it still be persisting? And I guess I just need to get my hands dirty with it, I think, is ultimately my answer. But I'm just curious, like, what that experiences look like from like a test staker who's wanting to always have something kind of going, but then it goes back to zero. Like, I'm trying to get my head around that.
Yeah. So the idea is that you should be able to run it within the period as normal operation, right? So it's mostly for, I would say, short-term staking testing, when you want to try your setup, you want to try the new client, or just you're staking for the first time, you want to see the process and so on, you want to try different deposits, different clients. So this is something that Ephemery is great. If you plan to run it alongside your node like nonstop, that requires having some script which retains it, because normally what would happen, for example, Deku would be able to do it now, but normally what would happen is that the client will just forks off. If there is normally there is not 60% or enough stakers to be able to continue the network running. So your client would just try to talk to a bunch of dead nodes, because the majority of the nodes would disconnect. So it would just die as an empty chain. However, what you can do is run a script alongside or Deku, which is able to restart and connect to the latest network iteration. So that requires some extra work for sure. But again, like what we were aiming for, or what we were hoping for, is the experience where you just test your setup and switch to mainnet or some other network. So it's just unlimited initial testing ground, I guess. Yeah. Not sure if I forgot anything, PK or anyone. Yeah.
Did you say the client automatically will shift? So if let's say that I wanted to run it to the ground and I wanted to see what happens with leakage over the long term, or I wanted to be on a splinter, that requires additional adjustment that the client would normally automatically join the new testnet.
It joins the new testnet. There's the extra step to join a new testnet. To join a new network, you need to either run a script alongside, which will generate a new Genesis, or download it and load it to the client, restart the client and load a new Genesis. So it's like 3 steps: download, restart, and basically or delete the old and restart. Teku can do this automatically within its own implementation, or should be able to do. It's brand new, it's not tested. But any other client, if you don't run extra script, or if you don't run this reset feature, it will just continue the empty chain. There is like I haven't done it like for a while. Maybe PK, better how it looks like from the user perspective, but just not much happens. It's just a node on empty network, basically. Yeah.
And all of the
basically, as you said, their network won't have any more blocks. So the last final block is basically the head, and you can still query your execution client for the states for the latest block, but it will not advance from there. There will be no new blocks built on top of that. So basically, the network heads at that point.
All of the Genesis validators would quit. So if you would have to mount thousands of validators to even. Sounds like a fun day.
Yeah. And even this will not lead to a majority, because our numbers are calculated that even if the deposit queue is filled up from the beginning, we will not lose the 66% majority before the network.
That's perfect.
Cancels.
That's a great design. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you told me that now, because it prevents me from trying something that won't work.
So we
that
have the
question.
calculation, yeah, in the EIP for the secure supermajority, and actually, like that's our goal. But to be fair, I think that right now we are still a bit short. Like if you manage to constantly deposit since Genesis till the like day 28, you might actually be able to retain it. I'm not super sure right now. Vicky, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that if you look at the numbers in the EIP, like we are kind of short there.
Yeah, I think we are a
Um,
little bit too short.
Break it, break it.
Yeah, but it's enough for like general security. We didn't see any attacks, but that's the idea, like to prevent this sort of attack that we always maintain the majority. If like anything happens, we can still finalize the chain. Yeah.
And even
That
if
all,
it would happen and we would lose the majority, the 66% majority, we would lose finality, but the network still processes. We just don't have finality in that point. But yeah, again, it can't be for a long time because if someone managed to deposit that many validators, the network is so close to the reset point that the unfinality doesn't really matter too. So yeah.
that all relates well to a question that Fizz was asking at the beginning in the chat, which is if I'm an unsophisticated staker who doesn't want to or know how to write a script that will bring the client from one instance to the other, how do I make sure that I'm not deploying on day 28?
That's a good question. We have the dates in the resources repo. Let me maybe share the link again. So in the GitHub/ephemery-testnet is all our data resources. In ephemery resources repo, we have the kind of a countdown. You can see the current network ID, the current iteration number, and when the next rollback happens. So you see that it's the 24th of October. So in 10 days, you still have enough time right now. Resets in always on Thursday. It's always Thursday evening every 4 weeks. So it's good to check before you run something. But it's a great question because there is also the period you need to wait. Like it takes a day for you to properly deposit and activate a validator. So it definitely matters. What we want to work on, or what is in slow works again by some contributors. Glory was working on it as well. Is a nicer website where we have the Ephemery dev website. It's currently missing there, but similar landing page where we have like nice big countdown actually with which will show you better. But right now it's in the resources. You can see exactly the timestamp. Yeah.
This brings me nicely to the next question. We've been talking about some of these use cases for the Ephemery network, but who are exactly the actual users of Ephemery? Like what kind of traffic we are currently seeing on the network? And maybe I'll start with Mario, but then let's go to PK afterwards.
Yeah, because PK has some better insight into the daytime. He keeps closer eye on the activity these days, and but from like subjective perspective, what I can say, uh, I see people who are learning to stake or run a node. We had people from EthStaker community from Reddit coming. That's definitely one part of it. But what personally what I really appreciate is again our fellowship. So running this protocol fellowship, running the EPF where people are learning about client development. They want to have some testnet to join and try their client changes or just try the node. Like if you want to understand how Ethereum works, you need to run the node first. And not everybody has the hardware. We have a bunch of people from all over the place, from Africa, India, South America, Asia, where they don't have bandwidth or hardware to be able to run even the Holashki testnet. And even if they do, of course, it's just faster and easier to run Ephemery. It gives you, if you're loading the Genesis manual, it gives you some more experience, some better understanding of how the client works. So for me, for people in our fellowship that we've been somehow mentoring, guiding to contribute to core Ethereum, for them to try those clients they need to contribute to, the easiest way to try them out is Ephemery. There are local testnets like Kurtosis and so on, but for certain things like that's overkill. If you just want to see how it works and connect to the network and maybe test your little change, that's really easiest to do at Ephemery. And we had a bunch of people who come to me asking like, hey, Mario, can you provide us a server with like 4 terabytes of space to run a node? And I asked them, oh, what do you need? Oh, I only need to test these changes. And turns out they can just run Ephemery locally and get the same test done, basically, with like sending some, again, you can send blobs, you can send any transactions to the network to test your case. In this case, it was about blobs. And turns out like Ephemery was all they needed. So yeah, people actually learning and trying out these nodes, and again, anyone who wants to do this, have some motivation to run the node without the resources. Yeah, that's one use case. And yeah, PK, if you have anything to add.
I can add a little bit from the on-chain activity. So in the last few iterations, we've mainly seen contract developers and testing activities on the chain. So right now, in the current iteration, we can also see around 200 contracts being deployed that are not our initial ones. And there are several token contracts and things like that. So users are really using the testnet to test their implementations, which is a great thing. The other side, the consensus layer testing is currently not used that much. We've seen some single users who deposited 1 or 2 validators from time to time, but it's not like an every iteration thing that happens currently. I think that will change probably once we have proper client implementations ready, like we have for Teku right now. So that will make the process a lot easier to join the network. But yeah, in general, it's a lot of EL activity going on Ephemery right now.
Yeah, it's still kind of like demanding in terms of like technical expertise to run a full staking node on Ephemery. But yeah, I'm glad we're seeing a bunch of these contract developers using Ephemery. That's some great news for the user network.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that one of the important updates in I think this year or last couple of months, that the Remix integrated Ephemery, the IDE from EF Team Remix that runs in the browser, which is again entry point for a bunch of developers to just try their hello world. It's the easiest environment to develop in Solidity. So they added Ephemery there, and that brings a bunch of EL users. So yeah, I forgot to mention about that. Remix team was great. And yeah, one thing about the Ephemery statistics is that it really depends. Like every iteration is different. So sometimes we have like few users, sometimes few hundred. I remember there was a boom like earlier this year, like in iterations like March, February to April, something like that. Around the time we even saw like hundreds of stakers from individuals. And then it went down. It was just a spike around the time when somebody was, trying something out, heard about Ephemery at the time, I guess. But yeah, you cannot see what was happening in the previous iteration. So sometimes like it might feel empty, but there is always something there. Yeah.
Can I talk about a way to malign incentives? So I've mentioned this in the chat. I don't know that this is a great idea, but EthStaker, all of us love POAPs, and so is there easy tooling to reward someone who proposes a block on Ephemery or who deploys a contract on Ephemery with a POAP? And of course, the maligned incentive there is of course, you're taking something that is meant to be ephemeral and giving it persistence. Just how I think. I'm just curious.
I generally like the idea, but I think it's gamed a lot by farmers. I mean, we have a mechanism built in that refunds wallets that deposited validator keys in previous iterations. So validator that was running in the previous iteration gets back its 32 ETH in the next iteration, so you can directly start validating again. But that's also a ephemeral thing because it's already affects the next iteration. I'm actually not sure if we can do a POAP or things because, as said, it will be gamed by farmers.
I also like it though because like hoarding POAPs doesn't make it harder for other people to get POAPs. Whereas like the whole thing about this is that like when people are hoarding Gurley ETH or Haleshki ETH, it makes it harder for other people to get that same ETH. And so like co-ops are an infinite supply.
Well, and
So
that's
we
what I'm.
need to
But
that we should deploy POAPs on Ephemery and just always in the next iteration give you the POAP for the previous one, right? We will have ephemeral POAPs.
I keep going back to these high school kids. Like, how did they get involved? And one of the ways that they can show their engagement is by saying, I don't have any money. I have really crappy hardware, but I've been on the Ephemery testnet for 6 months, or at least I paid somebody for the POAP, which really shows engagement.
So we actually have incentivization program in mind, which is exactly for this sort of use case for somebody who can somehow contribute even with a crappy hardware. I'm not sure if we want to jump there yet. Remy
Yeah, I
is
believe
kinda,
that's where we were at in terms of the agenda. So maybe you could just go ahead and talk about like how people can get involved in Ephemery and how they can get even paid for helping the network.
yeah, awesome. So this is the big reveal that we were planning to do here at this call. That's why we were hoping to organize this because we have some big news that we secured funding, or I mean, EthStaker approached us that they are able to donate towards Ephemery. So huge thanks for you guys to caring about this project, for caring about contributors, because EthStaker is donating, I believe, $60,000 that we will vest or distribute over the next 5 years. Again, the idea of Ephemery is being sustainable, so we try to spread as much as possible. And this will go towards people actively contributing, providing infrastructure, providing the network services. What does it mean? We want to award people who are running the Genesis validators or running some important infrastructure or developing whether the client implementations or integrations in some other software. It's all in all the details are in a document. Let me share that here so you guys can show it on the stream because that's like one comprehensive document with all the information. But to summarize it, people from these different categories, whether they want to provide a Genesis or some infrastructure, can sign up for this program, and it will work in a Protocol Guild style. We are heavily inspired by Protocol Guild, and I think the Protocol Guild is doing a great job and at this sort of public goods funding. So what we want to do is give people opportunity to sign up, become part of a split, and any donations. We also have other donations to Ephemery from Gitcoin and so on that we will vest over 5 years towards a split which goes to the active people. And exactly what Superfizz mentioned, that's exactly the people that I'm aiming for. Somebody who cannot really stake on mainnet because, well, the requirements or the financial requirements are high there, even if for hardware. But the hardware requirements for Ephemery are even lower. It's like you can have like $3 VPS a month or something like that. Like one CPU, tiny Raspberry Pi 4 or 3 will run the thing with like thousands of validators, I believe. So people who are students or are in some places where it's harder to participate in some other networks or some other contributions, this is the way to contribute to make the network sustainable and receive some sort of funding. It's not going to be a lot when we invested and when we distribute it across many people, but like maybe $500 or $1,000 a year, which is not much for average income in the West, but I believe for anybody who contributes, we can acknowledge their work without again, like sort of a Sybil resistance. Like you need to really show the proof of work. You need to really run some sort of infrastructure to be added to the split. So again, how it works? We have three categories: the Genesis validators. So when the network resets, it goes back to this Genesis validators, to the set of validators that we need to run the network, which is defined in the Genesis. There is like a few thousands of them, and we need more. What we discussed here before, there is not enough of them to make supermajority for the whole 28 days. So to get us over that line, we would like to have more people, but again, to distribute it more. Because I'm running some validators and PK and so on. If we are not here or if our nodes are down, we want to have more client diversity, more distribution. more people to continue running this when we are, gone, not interested, or something, whatever happens. We want to distribute it more and more towards community. So anybody from the community who is providing a node for running the validators can register the validators, and based on that will be added to the split. There is the goal to run every client combination on the network. So what is it, 5 times 5 now? 20 or 30 client combinations at this point that people can choose from. So people can run up to 3 nodes to get some reward from the split. The details on how many validators, how many nodes per person are in the document there. In the HackMD. So this is the one thing. More generous validators, more stability for the network, but also more infrastructure. So if you identify, we talked about explorers here, we talked about a bunch of stuff. If you find that there is some infrastructure missing, some, I don't know, sort of explorer, some sort of faucet, testing tool, anything that you find important and currently is missing, feel free to deploy it, feel free to run it on your own server, on your own node, and then get reimbursed from this fund. So running the infrastructure itself. And then other implementation work. This is also a way how to motivate people. So currently we have the implementations in the 3 clients done, but they need maintenance. They need updates every time there is a hard fork, like any network, right? But there might be some extra work connected to Ephemery. We just want to make sure that those people who work on these implementations have some motivation to keep going. We acknowledge their work, and even if it's like a few $100s, like we reimburse some time that they spend on Ephemery. So that's something that we are aiming for, but not just clients. Again, like you can implement this. There was the Ethereum call like last week or something with you guys, right? So for example, integrating it in Ethereum or DeepNode or something is another sort of work, implementation work to do. So like these 3 categories, and each have like their own weights in the protocol guild model. The details are again in the HackMD. But this idea, yeah, anyone who wants to contribute is very much welcome. We are hoping to get at least 5 people initially to start the split, to be able to deploy it with some initial set of addresses. So whoever comes first gets the bigger share of the split, right? So please sign up. Let us know in the Matrix channel. That's a great place to just discuss it with us and so on. But to sign up for this, or to claim your validators there, you can just come to the repo and open the PR there. All these Genesis validators, because the Genesis everything is open. It's on GitHub in this repository that I shared. You can see a document where you can add your validators and where you can claim a client combination to run. So just by opening a PR, you let us know that you want to participate. We'll validate this. We'll make sure that the validators are running correctly, and based on that, you will be added to the split. So it will take like 1 or 2 months, and then in the next 28 days, in the next period, you will be added. So yeah, basically that's it. I think I covered all of it. Hope I wasn't too all over the place.
I think that's totally fine. Yeah.
I just want to pass. I want to pass on some thanks to Maria Paula Fernandez, because she actually did a donation to EthStaker last year that was specifically geared towards supporting testnets. So that's where these funds are coming from.
Right. So yeah, thank you so much to Maria, because I just knew this EthStaker part. I wasn't sure where is it all coming from, and it's amazing that she did this and cares about the testnets. I'm very pleased that Ephemery can benefit from this and like continue our goal of sustainability. Yeah.
Thanks to her again for all these funds. I'm sure plenty of people are not aware of the Protocol Guild model of which this is based of. Can you explain, like, just briefly, how will Ephemery know someone is working on something, or like how will people be receiving their pay for the service that they're providing?
Right. So the idea is to have like completely transparent on-chain mechanism of this public goods funding or distributing the funds. So on-chain part looks as a multisig where we initially hold the funds and where we get donations. This multisig deploys vesting contract where these funds are locked in 5-year vesting. So there will be slowly released over 5 years. So if it's like, I don't know, $60,000 over 5 years, it's 12,000 a year, will be released to split contract. And now split contract, simple contract which splits the incoming funds into any addresses that are given by their shares, right? So there's, let's say, 5 addresses, each gets 20% if they have some equal share. Um, and right now, like it's gated by us, by this multisig, me, Remy, PK, who are signers in this multisig, to make sure that we watch each other and we decide we update the split with the new people coming in. And the process again is by opening a PR in the repository, in the relevant, adding your validators there, running the node, of course, or adding information on your infrastructure and talking to us in Matrix. You just need to let us know about your contribution, your work, for us to verify it and update this split. Of course, the people who are contributing or their handles are known. The addresses are detached from the handles. That's something that only the multisig owners will know. But the actual split and the shares is public. We just don't connect it to specific names. But yeah, that's the process. Protocol Guild is a bit more robust and especially like more experienced. It's been happening for a while, but it's heavily inspired with this vesting or pass through and vesting and split contract. And the main difference, I would say, is that at least at this point, like the Protocol Guild is like self-governed, and the Ephemery is still kind of governed by us, the founders, main contributors. But over the time, it should be transferring to the model of like self-governance, where this can become a little DAO managing the funds when we have enough people and enough contributors. That's why we invite more people to come and become the part of this testnet community, because we don't want to hold this forever, and would be nice to have it even more decentralized. But right now it's like a little bit more centralized protocol guild model. Yeah.
That's quite interesting, and I'm very eager to see this incentivization program going up. I believe that's all the questions that I had. Do we have any more questions from people on the call or from the chat?
I would just add, Trent Van Apps has a great article on this, by the way, on the guilds and funding public goods using this approach. So I would recommend maybe reading some of that. Yeah, just as a theoretical background. Yeah.
We'll make sure to share that article as well. My only last question for you, Mario, is where can we learn more about Ephemery?
Right. So the most simple one, I guess, would be ephemery.dev. Just very simple website, ephemery.dev, where you have a list of all the resources. Yeah, awesome. Awesome. We have the sticker there. Ephemery.dev is like a landing page with all kinds of resources. You can add a network to MetaMask, but you have like a bunch of links to the resources repository. So the GitHub/ephemery-testnet /ephemery-resources is the main repo with all the resources, all the block explorers, and all kinds of stuff. In the issue there, you can in the issues there you can find the information on the incentives program and discussion about that. There is a link to, in the ephemery.dev, you find a link to our Matrix channel. So please come join the Matrix, come hang out. If you don't use Matrix, it's a beautiful free software, encrypted messaging. So join, feel free to join and chat with us about Ephemery. Yeah, that's
Awesome.
is the main place to go, I guess.
People should definitely go to ephemery.dev to learn more about this project and join the Matrix group chat there. I believe that's all that we had. I think that's all that I had for me. But before closing this call, as usual, we have a POAP that we give to our listener. Actually, it's not a gift. You have to perform a transaction to obtain the POAP. But let me show the instruction on screen. So in order to obtain the community call ephemery POAP, you have to send at least 0.001 ETH to poap.ethstaker.eth. So all the instructions are on screen right now if you're watching on YouTube live. You can either send this on mainnet, Arbitrum, Base, or Optimism, and you have to perform this transaction before October 17th. So that's all that you have to do in order to get this POAP. There's a few more instructions on screen if you want to learn more about this way of distributing POAP there. Awesome. So that's all for me. Thanks for joining. Thanks for everyone in here for joining this call. This was very instructive for everyone. As usual, if you have any more topics that you'd like us to cover that are anywhere related to staking, make sure to get in touch with us on the EthStaker Discord, and we'll check out to make sure that we do more of these community calls in the future. Thanks again, everyone, and have a good day. Bye-bye.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having us. Yeah. Please contribute.